Shalom, family. Thank you so much for joining us here at Remnant House, the home of the strong and the very courageous. And we are always thankful when you join us for our weekly news update. This is where we get together and take a look at things from a biblical perspective. And so we like to call that the 10,000 foot view. I don't know what you call that, but maybe you can share with us what you call that. But we call it the 10,000 foot view. And we like to one of the things that we like to say around here is we want to be informed without being overwhelmed. One of the things the enemy wants to do is continue to move us into a form of anxiety or fear. And how many know that fear has torment? And so perfect love casts out all fear, and we're supposed to be walking in perfect love. And so remembering that, we take a look at the things that are going on the earth. There's peril, and we understand peril. There's danger in the earth. There are dangerous things, as the scripture told us that there would be perilous times. Amen. However, while there is in fact peril, what we now know as we walk in love, that fear is a choice. And so we do not choose fear despite the perils that we may see. This is very important that we maintain our confidence in our Messiah, because after all, fear is faith in your enemy's ability to hurt you. That's what it is. And faith is your confidence in your Father's ability to overcome anything thrown your way. Before we get going too far, I just want to point out that we, of course, have remnantwatch.com. That's remnantwatch.com, where we a labor of love, of course, by the Remnant. And this is where we will post all the stories that we cover on our weekly news updates. And you'll notice this handy banner at the top, always bringing you to the latest update. And of course, we do have these guides here for those disasters that don't seem to be going away. And of course, if you want to search back on some of the articles we've already covered in the past and looking for trends, maybe you're one of those people that is a newsie. I certainly was. And I had to get away from doing this every day because it was too much. Some of you are getting too many updates, and that interferes with your ability to be found faithful, what you're called to do. Then there's others that completely disconnected. That's just as difficult, obviously. So we wanted to find a good place to stand. And I believe this weekly news update has, well, frankly, fit the bill quite well. So thank you again for joining us. Thank you for those of you that share the link. We appreciate that. And make sure you're subscribed because, well, sometimes funny things happen. Funny things happen on the way to YouTube. So it does occur, and be aware of that. And so I just want to encourage you. And on that note, let's get into the news. And tonight's top story, we are looking at Trump now declaring official war. Now, there's a reason for this because, of course, once they declare war, then there's a time clock that he has before he gets a declaration of war. And so this is what they called him out on in the spring. This is what precipitated a lot of the peace talks and what have you. And now that those have broken down, he basically has now redeclared war. So Trump notifies Congress of the new war against Iran. So essentially a restart of the same war that was already in operation. And President Donald Trump notified the U.S. is again at war with Iran, gives the administration another 60-day clock, as I just mentioned, for military action. So he is playing it quite well. President Donald Trump formally notified lawmakers this weekend that the nation is once again at war with Iran, giving his administration another 60-day clock to use the military in the region without congressional approval. And so if you see a peace agreement within 60 days, this may just keep going on. In a letter to Congress dated July 10th, obtained by Politico, Trump stated that the strikes that began on July 7th represent military action consistent with my responsibilities to protect the Americans and the United States interests, both at home and abroad. So, of course, couching this as somehow being the good guy, taking control of the Strait of Hormuz. And, of course, those of you that are just catching up to what that really means, he's essentially attempting to put American hands on and take control of an incredible, important waterway through which 20% of the world's oil flows, and or did until this recent action. And so now, of course, they are doing everything they can to resolve that. But at the same time, how many know that, Trump continues to rattle the cages, right? He continues to say things that, frankly, I don't think they're conducive to peace. So Trump says that the U.S. is going to take out Iran's Pixax Mountain nuclear facility, which, of course, has got quite a few people concerned. He said on Monday the U.S. could soon attack Pickaxe Mountain as American forces launch a new round of strikes against the country. And it is a big fat target, he calls it. Of course, Trump added that while the U.S. sees no activity at the heavily fortified site that hosts two deeply buried tunnel complexes, Washington will probably give Pickaxe a shot relatively soon. So, talking about some of the most deeply protected areas in Iran, and the United States is talking openly about attacking those areas. So, any confidence they may have had in some of these places may be deteriorating quickly. And frankly, I don't think there's any winners in this. I think we're going to continue to see more back and forth. The northern part of Israel has been absolutely decimated. Much of Israel has been decimated by these attacks, and it doesn't look like that's going to end. So stand by for more of the same in the Middle East. In fact, the U.S. launches more strikes on Iran as the standoff over the Straits of Hormuz now escalates. Sorry about that, folks. And so in Dubai, United Emirates, the United States launched several waves of strikes on Iran on Sunday over an Iranian attack on a container ship in the Strait of Hormuz that set it ablaze and left a crew member missing earlier in the weekend. Iran responded with attacks on Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar, Jordan, and Oman. The nation on the other side of the strait, Tehran has pressed to collaborate in managing shipping traffic. And so what they're essentially doing is the United States, of course, is from across the way, right? So the United States is all the way over here, but these are other countries that, of course, are allied with or allies with the United States. And so, of course, that is the problem. So we're going to continue to see more of this effect unless Iran is rendered completely ineffective, which I think that's going to be hard to do, folks. We're going to continue to see more of this conflict, and but it does not seem to be ending in a good way, obviously, anytime soon. So U.S. launches new strikes on Iran, and Tehran attacks U.S. allies in the Gulf. There's more and more stories coming out confirming the same activity. So all you're going to see is a bombardment. Now, why are we seeing this in the news? Well, again, remember that it works to their advantage to keep you under a state of siege or a state of feeling in a state of anxiety. And why? Because many of their curses, many of the things that they have put upon you require that you do not think very deeply. And so you need to move quickly. You need to not be thinking. No deep contemplation. Make knee-jerk reactions and move without deep thought or good pondering. And this, of course, is what could go wrong, right? How many of your great decisions were made in haste? Many of them. And so, of course, that's exactly what they take advantage of, and has been done as a superseding type of thinking process for quite some time. And so, again, I think you're going to continue to see the same things because we are in a spiritual war, folks. And so we're not just dealing with flesh and blood, but principalities and powers that want us to feel oppressed. They want us to feel as if we are all powerless against what's coming our way. Okay, so that's something that if you're starting to feel that, you're not alone. There are many people that are feeling powerless, and that's because of the fracturing that has been accomplished by separating the shame, by separating you from your brethren. How many of you have a hunger and a thirst inside of you to be with your brethren? That's being put there by the Ruach. And Iran's supreme leader vows revenge for his father's killing. And of course, this is the first time he's reporting out since this occurred. Iran's supreme leader on Saturday vowed revenge for the U.S.-Israeli killing of his father and predecessor hours after President Donald Trump threatened severe reprisals in the event of any attempt on his life. Both sides dialed up the rhetoric after exchanges of fire that this week rocked an interim agreement aimed at ending the Middle East war, which broke out in late February, with massive U.S.-Israeli strikes that killed former Supreme Leader Ali Khomeini. Trump has declared the ceasefire over while leaving the door open for talks, and mediators have been trying to salvage a diplomatic solution, with Iranian media reporting that a delegation from Qatar traveled to Iran on Friday. So there are efforts to try to bring this back into a negotiation. After all, what have I always told you guys? Anytime you see war break out, where do they end up? Back at a table. So you could skip the war and just go to the table. You really could, because that's where they all end up. So now the question is, where the table is going to be, who's going to be sitting at it, and what agreements they're going to make now. Agreements they couldn't have made before they killed a bunch of people. I know, it's crazy. It absolutely makes no sense. And I, for one, am looking very much forward to Isaiah's prophecy of swords being beat into plowshares. And of course, now the New York Post is reporting that Iran definitely possesses chemical weapons, according to Netanyahu, the prime minister of Israel. And according to him, they would not hesitate to kill Americans. So, of course, what is he trying to do? He's trying to get us to feel justified in sending American lives into this conflict. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said on Tuesday that Iran definitely, absolutely, since the 1990s, they're going to have a nuclear weapon in 3 months, is what we kept hearing, okay? Definitely possesses chemical weapons and would not care a whit about murdering hundreds of thousands of Americans if they could. Netanyahu told Newsmax in an interview that the Islamic Republic has shown it's willing to murder its own citizens. Well, that can be said of a lot of countries, but I digress. And war in Tehran would have no compunction about using weapons of mass destruction. Bum, bum, bum. I can think of some other countries that are not afraid to use weapons of mass destruction. Can you guys think of some other countries that have no compunction whatsoever about wiping out entire neighborhoods? Can you think of that? Yeah? Okay. That are proving it all the time? Okay, just saying. So you're absolutely right. There can be in the earth people with no compunction, with no problem, attacking entire regions and destroying them, decimating. You're absolutely right. That is true. And so that is, of course, the push. It's true, and it can be anywhere. Of course, now, the Iranians are pushing back against the Americans' assertion of control over the straits. And the Iranians are making very clear that they feel no foreigner should have a stake in the Strait of Hormuz. So I guess they determine a foreigner by how far they are from the strait. So if you live in this country here, isn't this a foreigner? Yes? Okay. How about this? Is they a foreigner? Yeah? Okay. So where's foreign start? See, we start using words, you're not sure what they mean, you can start creating all kinds of new problems. In a statement on Thursday, the RGC Navy noted that the U.S. military actions in the Strait of Hormuz will not only draw a crushing response from Iran, but also seriously disrupt the process of gradually reopening the waterway and jeopardizing the interests of countries economically dependent on it. I don't know. The United States has got a gas pump in the Gulf of America, and we're an oil selling country, so maybe there's a benefit to keeping a war going over there. I don't know. What do you guys think? Is there somebody benefiting? They always say follow the money, right? So why is this continuing? Why do we have a continuation of a silly war that is doing nobody any good, and there's not going to be any one-sided victory for anybody? Why do we continue doing this? You have to ask those questions, because a lot of this is theatrics. And, of course, now Israel, of course, is very eager to continue to stoke this. And Fox News is reporting that Israel shares an intelligence report warning that Iran plotted a new assassination attempt against Trump to get all the Trump supporters all up in arms. Oh, no, you're not going to kill our president. Okay. Look, war means everything's on the table. So if you declare war, yeah, they're gonna make threats against your leader, just as the other side is making threats against leaders. Iranian mourners at Khomeini's funeral displayed a banner that said, "We will kill Trump," as IRGC threats mounts. And so again, in this culture, we don't make banners. They just do it. They just drop bombs. Over there, they make banners first. So that's the only difference. Israel recently shared intelligence with the United States indicating Iran had developed a fresh plan to assassinate President Donald Trump, according to a Wall Street Journal report Thursday, citing people familiar with the matter. The reported intelligence would mark an escalation in the long-standing threats against Trump. I don't know how it's an escalation when, in fact, deadly threats have been exchanged for quite some time. So how is this an escalation to threaten their life when they already threatened your life? We really mean it this time. I mean, we were really seriously going to kill you this time. Maybe that's how you escalate. I don't know. Seems silly to me. And it seems like a lot of it is theatrics. And of course, you're going to try to kill him. You're at war. So a lot is happening in this region, and this is why we pay attention to it, because it is, of course, the region of the scripture. And what is directly north of Israel, everybody? So, of course, we see scriptures that talk about that which comes from the north. What's directly north of Israel? Well, many times people think right away about Russia, and they go way up there. But I want to tell you something. Directly north of Israel is Turkey, okay? Trump is lifting defense sanctions on Turkey, clearing the way, by the way. So watch this now. He cleared the way to give Erdogan. Now, Erdogan is the prime minister of Turkey, who is not a fan of Israel, let me just say, okay? And he just cleared the way to give him F-35s despite the GOP and Israeli opposition. Look at this, guys. Israel's not happy, but he went ahead and did it anyway. Ankara, Turkey President Trump said Tuesday that he will lift sanctions that restrict the sale of military equipment to Turkey, potentially paving the way for the provision of F-35 stealth fighter jets over the opposition of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, which many believe is not going to last to the next election. So I don't think Trump's that worried about what Benjamin says, because he probably figures Benjamin has seen his best days. Benjamin's on his way out, I think. I think they're going to vote him out. I don't think he's going to survive this next election. What do you guys think? Do you think Benjamin Netanyahu survives this next election? What do you guys think? I don't think he does. I think that the pushback was really strong. Remember, when he got elected, it was barely. Remember that? Okay. Well, the pushback now is really strong. And so, of course, people get war fatigue pretty fast. How about Iran? Do you think they got some war fatigue? Missiles are bombarding Iran. Iran war takes terrifying turns as missiles bombard nuclear plant and flights are thrown into chaos. So this country is no longer functioning as normal. And this escalation over Tehran retaliated by firing missiles and, of course, drones at war-weary U.S. allies in the Middle East. And we get nonstop nonsense going back and forth. So this is going to continue until we are exhausted. I seem to recall a letter written to Giuseppe from a man by the name of Albert Pike, who said that this exact thing would occur until we fought to exhaustion. So, interesting seeing that we're watching right now unfold. And now there's potential for this to move into the Western Hemisphere, with Iranian drones in Cuba could threaten South Florida, officials are warning. So former Florida Governor Jeb Bush, chairman of the advocacy group United Against Nuclear Iran, joined U.S. Rep. Carlos Jimenez and to highlight concerns about what they say are roughly 300 Iranian drones that have been delivered to Cuba. And so that can be considered a staging ground, okay? And these drones are not tiny drones. These are very large weapons. And, of course, that can be used to do considerable damage in South Florida. An Iranian-made drone displayed at the Biltmore Hotel serves as a stark warning from national security advocates and South Florida officials who say Cuba's growing military ties with Iran could pose a threat to the United States. And I also think about the prophecies of Dmitry Duduman, and Cuba was included in attacking the United States. Former Florida Governor Jeb Bush, chairman of the advocacy group United Against Nuclear Iran, joined U.S. Representative Carlos Jimenez to highlight concerns about what they say are roughly 300 Iranian drones. So that's a large number of drones. Remember, guys, That's not a missile. That's a drone. A drone goes on multiple missions, right? So not just one. And that could be bad news for the USA, right? So we've got to continue to pray for peace, for shalom, and watch and see what occurs on this earth. I tell you what, though, we are watching Cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Look at this, guys. Meet the Robert the Robot. We've been talking about robots a lot. We talk about some of their fans. They're just infatuated with robots and trying to make robots that are human-like, right? So they're so dedicated to this, and I don't think they're ever going to stop until they get there. So just plan on it. Meet Robert the Robot, a Swiss AI robot that changes its face in real time to look like Donald Trump, Barack Obama, Mark Zuckerberg. It's at the Geneva's AI Summit. And so the humanoid robot developed in Switzerland became one of the standout attractions at the AI for Good Global Summit in Geneva after astonishing visitors by seamlessly changing its face to resemble prominent public figures. And of course, what are they doing here? They're punking everybody. They're pretending they don't have the ability to do this on the world stage and absolutely fool you. So they're slow walking everybody in this disclosure. This is a different disclosure. Welcome to disclosure, where they're going to disclose what they can do, but they'll do it slowly, as if, oh, they're just discovering it. They didn't do it in the 60s or the 70s. Oh, no, this is new stuff, brand new. You guys are with us when we discovered it, like the 26th red heifer. How many of those do you need? But here we go again, folks. And now we're taking a look because how many heard that Senator Lindsey Graham, Republican Senator Lindsey Graham from, I believe, South Carolina, died suddenly. So we have another died suddenly, folks. Died suddenly over the weekend. Was fine. Talked to the president on Shabbat, Saturday, and then the next day he was dead. And so now they're, of course, looking closely at that. Their preliminary findings were released. The official Office of the Medical Examiner of the Office of District Columbia has released its preliminary findings, and the medical examiner reports, of course, he died at the age of 71, and arterial sclerosis was, I believe, the diagnosis. I don't see it here, but I seem to remember that it was arterial sclerosis here, arteriosclerotic cardiovascular disease, which means he had a blocked artery. That's what that means. Blocked artery. So he needed some nattokinase. That's what he needed. He needed an herbal supplement that's been available for a long, long time from the Japanese that eats all the plaque and removes it from your arteries to make your blood flow, because it's all about the blood. So unfortunately, this man perished at 71, and I still think that's fairly young, still capable of doing so much in the world, and now he is gone. And so they are now looking closely at this because it was a little suspicious that it was literally right after coming back from Ukraine. And so now they're looking closer at this. How many think there may possibly be some some foul play? It could be. And of course, they're all talking about this and, talking about prayers for the family and so forth. Brief and sudden illness. Yeah, it was literally one day. That's how brief and sudden. So they don't want to say he died suddenly. So they're just saying a brief and sudden illness that lasted one day. And he was gone. So there's good reason to maybe take a closer look. It's possible that he was, infected by something, or there was some kind of, Mission Impossible type attack. The Iranians did threaten him. So we should at least take a closer look at his body, see if there was anything that was done to him, if he was bumped into, so to speak, given something. It's possible. Anything's possible in this crazy world. We've watched too many movies to not ask questions now. How many are like, that's Mission Impossible, man? I know it. I know it. Where Tom Cruise at? I know it, right? There's a lot of people like, they did. There's a lot of people like, I don't know. I don't know. So might be a good idea to take a closer look. And something very interesting is going on in Israel this coming fall feast period. That is coming up this actually just after in November. The first International Congress of Noahide set for Jerusalem this November. A lot of people are watching this with great interest. If you understand the implications of Noahide laws, then you would understand why it's probably not a good idea to be in a mochaccino world. Just saying. For the first time in history, tens of thousands of non-Jews who voluntarily embraced the 7 laws of Noah are no longer scattered and stateless. So they're giving them form while at the same time, watch this now, putting you outside of Yasharel while putting themselves inside. Okay, so this is always an interesting thing as they do this. The Congress scheduled for November 2nd through the 6th will unfold under the formal recognition of the State of Israel. So this is not some fringe movement or fringe thing. It's actually being recognized by the State of Israel. So this bodes poorly. We'll be keeping an eye on that as we go. So stay tuned for further updates on that upcoming drama. And I do believe it's going to impact you folks. So if you think you're going to sit still in their mochaccino world, which is essentially sitting in their slave pit and act like nothing's going to happen, then what could go wrong, right? What could go wrong? Just stay there. I'm sure it'll be fine. I'm sure everything will be great. Just stay there. It'll be fine. In fact, Georgia finally found out things weren't going to be just fine. They say they were forced to sell their home to help power AI data centers, and they considered it theft. Sell your home or the state will take it. That's the ultimatum some homeowners in Georgia say they are facing amidst the AI boom. And utility giant Georgia Power is planning to build a new transmission line to in part help power new data centers, and its estimates 70-80% of the power in the new line will help serve data centers, and the remaining 20 to 30% of power will serve the state's growing residential and commercial demand. And so, as you can see, you are not prioritized, and that is something that should concern you greatly. I mean, they are flat telling you you are not that important. So you should go where you are. Just saying. According to the company, increasing demand has outpaced the capacity of its existing grid, and building a new transmission line requires acquiring more than 300 parcels of land, including residential properties. So they're going to threaten people and use whatever force they can to accomplish their goals. And again, folks, as much as we would like to keep status quo on everything, that's just not reality. Reality is that you're going to have to think about whether or not where you are, where you're battening down the hatches is the right place to be. Amen. And so it is something for you to consider for a lot of reasons, not just that one, but certainly that one is this issue. And again, the country is up in arms about this, right? So a lot of people are reacting to data centers. And of course, now they're going to have a national day of protests against the data centers. We'll see how effective this is. Let's see if this shuts them all down. There are over 5,000 data centers across the United States. Do you think, let me ask, because Newsweek is a big news outlet, and they're promoting this National Day of Protest against the data centers on July 18th. Who thinks that's going to result in shutting down 5,000 data centers across the United States? Let me see a show of hands of people who think that's going to work. Okay. So you don't think that's going to work. You don't think that's going to result in a shutdown. The National Day of Protest against data centers is planned across the U.S. for July 18th as community backlash over the development of artificial intelligence centers continues to grow. Humans First, a conservative advocacy group, says the demonstrations are intended to pressure local, state, and federal officials to protect communities from rising utility costs, water demand, noise, land use changes, and what it describes as national security risks tied to rapid AI expansion. Whew, that's a mouthful. I'm sure they're going to get right on it. That's a mouthful. They're going to run right down. They're going to shut it off. They're going to see you guys with your signs, and they're going to run like this. Oh my gosh, let's shut down every data center in the whole state. Let's just set them up, shut them down the whole country. How about the whole world? I mean, even outer space, shut them off. We're scared. You know that's not what's going to happen, right? You realize, of course, they're just going to yawn. They're going to endure the protest. It's going to be over. They're going to go have lattes somewhere, and they're going to keep right on building them. The only way you can affect these data centers, am I telling you, is anybody out there listening? I hope this is on. Okay. The only way you're going to affect them, my beautiful people, is to make them obsolete. That is how you solve this. Make them stupid. Make them useless. Make them so silly that you wonder why they even built them. Make them lose billions on these because we don't need them. Now, how are you going to accomplish that? Now, that's a different question. Okay? And you won't accomplish that by telling them to get rid of their artificial intelligence because that ship has left that horses out of the barn. Okay, so you're going to have a much more efficient answer that solves the problem and makes those data centers unnecessary. There's the solution, folks. Okay, so that's where we're headed, and that's what I believe you're going to see in these wonderful United States of my America. You're going to see it. So I do believe you're going to see some great things that come and make some of that obsolete. So don't give up hope. Continue to pray and believe, because I do believe that we are moving in a positive direction despite what you may be seeing. Now, there's, of course, a lot of use of technology that can be beneficial. Some of it can be a little creepy, depends on how it's utilized and the motivation. But I do see attempts to at least positively impact people. And there's a lot of what they're calling a paradox of progress. Now you're going to see emotional intelligence as a differentiator in AI augmented workforce. So you're going to see a lot of effort done there. This is where some of our patent technology will apply, but I'm certain they're going to be trying to go around that in other ways as well. EMS has been, these AI systems are increasingly capable of analyzing vast data sets, identifying patterns, and predicting outcomes, and standardizing decision pathways. This helps them with emotional intelligence because, frankly, one of the things that people do not notice is their patterns. Their mouths may lie, but the patterns don't. Patterns indicate predictable behavior. And so if there's one thing these things are good at, is finding patterns. And so people move in patterns, and this, of course, can be helpful if used with the right spirit. Again, it's all spirit. Remember what kind of war we're on. We're not in a digital war. We're in a spiritual war. One more time. We are not in a digital war. Never were we told that we would be fighting a digital war. We were told that we would fight a spiritual war. They are using digital tools, both good and evil, but the war is spiritual. Let's not forget that, because I believe all of this has to do with control, with fear, intimidation. These are spirits, folks, that are attempting control. Look at this. Your grocery store is now tracking you. Now, look at that. I mean, at first you're thinking, oh my gosh, what's going on? Well, of course they're tracking. Anything that's going on inside their store, they're going to be paying attention to. But what does make this a little bit creepier is that now your license plate is now being shared with the police. That's a little over the top. So now there's these flock cameras so they can keep an eye on their flock, so they can fleece their flock. That joke just wrote itself, just saying. And shoppers pulled into the Lowe's parking lot in Ohio. By the way, a lot of things going on in Ohio. So there is that. Before the engine's off, a small camera in a pole has already read the license plate, cataloged the car's color, make, and that faded marathon sticker on the bumper. Everything gets logged to a searchable database. That is the Flock's, quote, safety automated license plate reader system. For short, it's ALPR, installed at retailers across Ohio, feeding vehicle data to police. So again, we got pre-crime going on here. We're going to catch you before you do the crime, right? We're going to know who everyone is. We're going to identify everyone. And by the way, Ohio just passed a law, an anti-kind of patriot law that says you do have to identify yourself to a police officer, regardless of, I mean, they made it so that it's pretty much mandatory. So if you're in Ohio, no more side road arguments about your ID. You're going to have to just produce it. So that's interesting what's going on in Ohio, and other countries may follow suit. So a very interesting thing to pay attention to, because again, the erosion of rights is not overnight. It is a slow erosion that is what becomes detrimental. Again, a temporary suspension of rights can be corrected. It's so egregious, it's usually corrected. Somebody does something to you or deprives you of your rights. It is usually so egregious that that you will have great support to push it back. But when it's slowly done, when it's done over time, there is no pushback. And they know that. So that's what you're seeing. And now you're going to see greater and greater invasions of privacy in every regard that they can think of. Here's one that I thought was really interesting. And again, under the guise of it being protective, but there can be a going too far. To advanced driver distraction warning system, now mandatory across all new EU vehicles. So a smart eye with the EU's general safety regulation now fully enforced for driver distraction warnings, which could include a lot of things. Direct driver monitoring becomes a standard safety technology across one of the world's largest automotive markets. Yes, you just read that right. They are monitoring drivers literally as they drive. As of today, ADDW systems are mandatory in all new vehicles sold in the European market under the EU's general safety regulation. The requirement marks a major step in the adoption of driver monitoring technology. Driver monitoring technology. And this is going to continue because they are control freaks. And I mean, this is a pretty consistent theme. They want to know everything. They feel entitled to knowing everything going on in your life. If there's pictures in there, we want to see them. We want to know. They feel entitled to everything. And this is really getting wild. I think the world is going to split into groups where people are like, I want nothing to do with tech. You guys don't have any rights here. And there's others that are going to be fully on board with Mochaccino world, as I like to call it. And so, of course, some of them may find out Mochaccino world's not all on board with them. You know what's really sad? When you build it, right? You built it like you're like, oh, dedicating your life, like giving your weekends and your evenings, and you barely have a social life. So you could build, Microsoft's AI system, like whatever, and then they lay you off. Yeah. Microsoft is laying off 4,800 workers, 4,800 people losing their job, and AI is changing how work is getting done. The job cuts amount to 2.1% of Microsoft's global workforce. So it tells you they've got quite a big workforce. And it said on Monday that it will lay off 4,800 employees, and that job cuts would especially pronounce its Xbox department. And I think a lot's going on with gaming. By the way, gaming is a recipe for poverty. If you know anyone who is addicted to games, get them off them. The layoffs will affect 2.1% of Microsoft's global workforce, Amy Coleman said, Executive Vice President and Chief People Officer. I never heard of that title before, Chief People Officer. Just thought that was cute. And basically, they attributed the layoffs to, in part, to a shakeup in the tech sector wrought by, of course, AI. And none of the terminated roles will be replaced by AI, of course not, because that would be a suable offense. So they can't say that. No. We're just adjusting based on the market. The market is shifting. Requires that we terminate 4,800 people. Just so okay. And why is that? Well, maybe it's because they were deemed by those folks to be useless. Now, this is directly in the face of the king because he doesn't make anyone useless. So this is really disrespectful. The very devices that we made, the systems that mankind made, is now going to determine that man itself is useless. Watch this. AI will create useless class of humans, predict best-selling historian. Smarter intelligence, artificial intelligence, one of the 21st century's most dire threats, writes Yuval Noah Harari in follow-up to Sapiens. It's hard to miss the warnings. In the race to make computers more intelligent than us, humanity will summon a demon, bring forth the end of days, code itself into oblivion, and instead of silicone assistants, will build silicone assassins. This is one of the concerns that a lot of people have about putting AI or artificial intelligence into robots and giving them robotic ability. I think that's a disastrous thing to do. And yet they are racing toward it. So who thinks that they're going to stop anytime soon? Who thinks they're going to go, oh, you're right. You know, we should stop here. I mean, what were we thinking? If you're waiting for that, I want to sell you, I want to sell you a piece of a bridge in Brooklyn. Just saying. And now they're not only continuing this, they're now looking for loopholes with Native Americans. So the same guys that gave them the, casinos, when they couldn't put casinos in a state because it's illegal to do gambling, but they could use the Native American land, and that's where they put the casinos. Remember that? You remember that? You remember. Well, if they put laws in the United States to prevent data centers, they may go around that so that they can go to the Native Americans. And so you're seeing an effort. I'm not going to go into this in big detail, but basically the case is simple. Native nations often control large, contiguous territory with wind and solar potential, transmission access, and sovereign status, meaning distinct regulatory and tax authority that can speed permits. So anybody that's watched Yellowstone knows all about that, right? If you watched any of that, you understand how that can work. And here we go, folks. Now they're going into Native American lands to try to put data centers in there. And again, the solution is going to be not protests, but wisdom. Wisdom will be the answer in the end. And by the way, speaking of wisdom, you need to be really wise concerning the purchase of your food. And we continue to warn you all about the dangers of, again, big food, right? And so frozen blueberries sold at Publix linked to an E. coli outbreak. You really got to get really good at learning how to wash your vegetables too, by the way. There are various things you can do to really improve that. And let me encourage you. And so Green Wise organic frozen blueberries produced by Frutas de Hortalizas del Sur in San Carlos, Chile, have been linked to an outbreak of illness caused by the E. coli bacteria. So if you are someone who may have taken those in, you might, or if you have those in your freezer, you might want to check and see if they are part of that batch, and maybe you have to get rid of those. Okay, so you got to be careful with that. I don't know how you would know that ahead of time. I guess you wouldn't. And so just be aware of the fact that there are recalls and things like that happen all the time. Personally, I think we should just grow our own blueberries. What do you guys think? Should we grow blueberries? Want to grow blueberries? Yeah, okay. Because we were like, oh, let's we just make our own. Because I don't trust these guys with their bags, okay, and the way that they do everything. And what did they spray on them by the time they got to that bag? I mean, don't get me started. My goodness. Why are you getting me started on blueberries? Why? Okay, calm down. Let's talk about this. This will be great. More diseases and things hitting. And again, warnings that we were told about in Matthew 24 about pestilence. Urgent warning as brain swelling disease surges in Southern California neighborhoods. And so, by the way, there were several different outbreaks that I heard reports about. But this one I thought was interesting because we heard about them releasing some genetically modified mosquitoes. You guys remember that? And now we're seeing mosquito-borne viruses that can cause deadly brain swelling. It's surging across Orange County. But we just heard about them releasing the mosquitoes, 2-3 weeks ago? So who here is drawing a line? I don't know about the rest of you, but this looks highly suspicious, right? So again, I think that we're all subject to what's going on in the world. And I think, again, choosing where you're going to be is a pretty important thing to note. By the way, how many have heard about this? This is an odd story. Does anybody know what this means? There was a mysterious symbol that's been popping up across Las Vegas, and people are trying to figure out what it means because it's just popping up. It's just everywhere. So it's this symbol right here, guys. And it's kind of all over. Las Vegas has been kind of a ghost town. Nevada's got some serious water problems. And so very interesting. I don't know what it means, but it has a date, 7/16/2026. And maybe it has something to do with those protests. Who knows? Maybe it's got something to do with some other things. Who knows what's going on, right? So if you got any thoughts on that, I have no idea what that's about. That's a very odd symbol. Don't know anything about it. Thought you guys might. So let us know. We'll continue to see problems with water distribution. I'm going to call it that. Water distribution, right? Why? Because, well, we got flooding in one part of the country in these United States and can't get the water where we need it in drought. So it's kind of an interesting flash floods. We're in San Antonio, by the way, so I know that for a fact. And here we're seeing them flash floods threats from Tennessee to Florida after devastating Missouri, prompting hundreds of rescues. So slow-moving storms on Sunday are triggering new flood watches from Tennessee to Kentucky after heavy rains caused catastrophic flooding in Missouri that killed a woman and prompted hundreds of water rescues. See all these resources being used for water rescues, for water management and mitigation. If those resources were used to pump water west, you would get rid of flooding. Flooding would be welcomed. You would take that water and just ship it. I mean, what do I know? I'm just a guy in the middle of nowhere. So what do I know? But just saying, wouldn't that be clever? I think it would be. So we could solve that problem. We could at least mitigate it, move some of that water where it's needed. Lake Mead should be the collecting point of all the excess water they don't know what to do with all over the country. Pump it out, pour it in the lake. I mean, it just seems to me that you got drought over here and just a few hundred miles. I mean, it's not a short distance, but still they pump all kinds of other things through pipelines. Why not water? Just wondering, just a curious guy. Anyway, speaking of the earth doing funny things, how about earthquakes rocking California as a fault line? Fears are real and they are growing. We continue to see more reports about the fault lines in California. Are these just continuing of the same warnings we've heard over and over, or is something really big coming to California? What do you guys think? I wonder that. I wonder, are we just in a perpetual loop of, hey, there are always going to be rumblings in California, or is something finally going to happen in that state? 2 earthquakes rocked California back-to-back days as fears about 2 major fault lines have been real and growing. A magnitude 4.1 quake hit just outside of Frazier Park around 3:38 a.m. on Sunday, according to the Los Angeles Times, and it likely struck on the San Andreas fault line. Of course, that's the most famous fault line, according to the USGS, and was felt more than 40 miles away in Santa Clarita. A second earthquake with a magnitude of 4.3. And again, these aren't very big on their own, but if they're indicating the cracking of a plate, that's why it's concerning. That shook Los Angeles and Southern California around 9:40 a.m. So not that long after the first one. So is something happening in California? Come on, you prophetic people. Tell me what you feel and see, because I do believe that sooner or later, California is going to experience sort of the big one, right? It just seems to me that is a loaded plate underneath there. Switching gears, I don't like these stories, but they are important for us to talk about because of where we put our young people and how we grow them up. And the world has really weird ideas about how to grow up children. And this is disturbing. A wholesome-looking Midwest teacher, 21, had a bright future until she preyed on a boy, 14, by sending him daily photos, of course, and horrifying sex messages. And we can't look at this story. It's behind a paywall. But I think this is a very, very terrible reality of our world, right? And so, again, here we have a young lady who, let's see if I can get this picture. We'll see if it'll pop up. Ooh, we might get it. No, we do not. Well, never mind. She was a nice-looking lady, too. I remember seeing the lead up to this story. Nice-looking lady, and should have gone on to a beautiful life, and instead now will likely spend her time in prison, spend the rest of her life being marked as a sexual predator, all because of the orientations and the way in which our society is going. So again, folks, be really careful about where you put your children. If you start getting a queasy feeling, you might want to run with that. Okay? Canada, by the way, is again becoming increasingly difficult to preach the gospel. Be very careful if you're up in Canada, because the Canadian government is really kind of cracking down on different things. Now, they're going to label things misinformation. They're going to label it all kinds of things. So just be aware of that. Be sensitive to the new world that you are living in. And a great persecution is rising. Something I talked about 27 years ago. Prepare for the coming persecution. And now you're seeing it. So the persecution that you're going to endure, the persecution that you're going to see in this world is considerable. Be aware of it. And it is deadly. So again, peril is real. Fear is a choice. Elon Musk says, Optimus, his new, robot. This one. This one's like iRobot. Remember the one with Will Smith? Some of you don't remember that movie. My goodness, go watch it. Will Smith saves the day from AI robots, okay? And AI will enable excellent healthcare, according to this. Oh, yeah. They always start with the healthcare. They always start off with the benevolent and wonderful, and it's just going to save the world. Okay, well, sees 50 billion AI compute need, and that's what they're going for. And basically, this is Elon Musk, of course. He thinks he's on top of it, and he's just going to bring in the best things. And I'm really nervous about what they are bringing in. Believes the company's Optimus humanoid robot, as well as its artificial intelligence efforts, will enable accessible healthcare. Yeah, except the problem is these things are built to hallucinate. So there's some fundamental flaws with AI that they're going to have to arrest and address before they are sued into oblivion. And I don't think it's going to last more than another 10 years before major changes have to occur there. So again, some of this is preliminary and I think grossly premature. I do think they are, of course, still going to utilize this technology. So stand by. Alarm over launch of facial recognition in the UK shops that's instantly alerts the police. So this is in addition to those flock cameras that we were talking about that are taking pictures of license plates. This is right within the stores. Civil liberties groups say face watch system in stores such as Sainsbury and B&M is a dangerous escalation. Facial recognition technology in shops soon alert police in real time to the presence of what are called serious offenders. So the days of going to the store, now you've got person of interest going on at the store, right? So you go to the store, you're going to be watched. The cops may be called, all that, which again, sounds good. Sounds like, well, if you're a law-abiding citizen, what could be the problem? But again, anybody can manipulate these systems. You can go from a law-abiding citizen to a wanted fugitive overnight. And lastly, 3 things Christians should know about minions and monsters. I can't believe I got to talk about this, but it's true. Christians still go to these shows and they think it's no big deal. But the latest Minions adventure, Minions and Monsters, arrived in theaters last week as the third standalone of the Despicable Me universe. And while it's not clear why Minions and Monsters haven't lived up to its expectations, I can tell you shouldn't be bringing your children to anything about monsters. Now, one of the biggest challenges that we're going to have in our society is finding entertaining things to do, finding things that are fun, finding things that are not harmful. And so trying to make good with the world's content is really a bad idea. Instead, what we should band together to do is create new content that is not offensive. Who wants to do that? Who wants to just keep watching their content, or do you want to create your own? Do you want to create content that's safe for children? Do you want to create content that you wouldn't be ashamed to show your child? Then maybe we should do that instead of trying to fix these productions made by those who hate Mashiach and his kingdom. Well, that's it for tonight. I pray this broadcast, this report, has been a berakah to you. We're able to pull it off and get it out without any storms interfering or any other issues. So we're grateful to all of you who join us. Please like and share, and please encourage others to join us for our weekly news updates where we are informed without being overwhelmed. Thanks again for joining us. Good night.